This is Moving Forward with Dr. Diana Clark.
Welcome back to Moving Forward Talk with Diana. I am your host. This is a space where we share real stories of struggle, growth, and healing. The goal is to assist others who might be walking similar experience. Before we jump in, last session we had a beautiful conversation in reference talking about healing, identity, and slowing down long enough to hear what our minds and bodies might be telling us. And before we jump back in, I want to thank you, Quincy, for coming back for part two.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And remember, we left off talking about disconnection,
Hmm.
where you felt so disconnected. That's
Hmm.
where I'd love to begin today because I think that part of your story will resonate with a lot of people.
Hmm.
Because I do
Yeah.
believe, Quincy, and in your profession, you probably could resonate that a lot of the times, a lot of us, we show up for others while we are emotionally disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when you grow up in a large family, a lot of what happens is you learn to take care of the needs of others,
Mhm,
especially in our culture where we live in a very collective culture.
mhm,
And oftentimes, growing up, I watch and witness my parents and grandparents taking care of our elderly family members.
mhm,
I think in that comes a certain level of self-sacrifice
mhm,
that really only happens because you're extending so much of yourself to ensure that the person that you're working to help get better or wherever the case may be
mhm.
to create stability, you have to in a way sacrifice a part of who you are. And
Yeah.
so growing up, I witnessed a lot of the self-sacrificing and witnessed a lot of that giving of oneself when there's really nothing more left to pour out of their own cup. They were pouring from empty cups. And so, witnessing that, I grew up thinking that that was the norm, thinking that that was fairly normal for me to always self-sacrifice to ensure the needs of those I worked with, worked for, and all the things I have done in my life came about by putting other people before myself, before my own needs, before my own healing. And a lot of it I had recognized was a constant loop of um, it was just unrelenting forgiveness for myself. It was just
Mhm,
that need to constantly validate myself externally
mhm,
when that wasn't necessarily the case because, looking and searching for um, external validation ended up becoming a situation of disjointedness because I was looking for validation in love, looking for validation in a care and looking for validation in so many different places. It's like the old adage goes, looking for love in all the wrong places. And that was what I think led to a lot of that disjointedness in my life because
mhm,
I had gotten so much perspective from people that wasn't me. And I didn't really know who I was in all that perspective. I knew who I was with the expectations of others and the opinions of others. And so a lot of it came down to seeing that, that self-sacrificing behavior and it translated into my own self-worth. Because if I wasn't given enough to others
yeah.
or seeking that external validation when the time came for me to ask questions about me, it felt like I was not living up to some type of potential, living up to some type of expectation. So I truthfully believe that disconnectedness comes from the detachment of what I like to call the Trinity, the internal Trinity, right? The
Mhm,
mind, the body, the
mhm,
heart. Well, heart and soul kind of go together, right? Because that's where we make a lot of those decisions. And so when those things were disjointed, it was like my mind was saying one thing, my heart was saying another
mhm,
thing, And my body was just saying, hey, we need to sleep. We need rest. We need something that's not this thing that we've been doing. We're tired. We're running ourselves ragged. We're to the point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
And when I finally said, okay, let me see, let me look inward and see what my inner guidance is saying, what my inner voice is saying to me right now. If I'm feeling anxious, maybe it's worth sitting with that for a minute and allowing my inner voice to say, hey, this is what happened, what made us anxious. When I started, I mentioned in our last video that with the beginning of my healing journey, when I went to my first therapist, she had said to me, you don't ever take the time to just feel. You're trying to figure out everything before you need to, but you can't figure out what's going on until you learn to feel what's going on first, because you don't really know yourself enough to kind of get to the root of what exactly it is that's causing this confusion, this anxiety, this disjointedness. And so when I learned to really start feeling emotions, really actually sitting with those emotions, is when I then figured out a lot of the internal pieces that needed to come together so that I had that interconnectedness with my mind, my body, and my heart and my soul, you know? So yeah, I think the disjointedness just came from what I seen growing up, but s- um, also growing up in a time where external validation was valued over internal validation, you know? And that's what I think really caused a lot of rifts when I decided that I was going to live for me within not only like within the people that I had existed with in that way, but with just in myself. It
Right.
created emotions that I couldn't express or even knew how to put a name to. I mean, I could tell you one that was really prevalent was sadness, and another one was anger. It was a lot of sadness and anger, but finally, when I felt back, like I was back in my body, back whole in who I was, that's when a lot of that dissipated. And
Right.
truthfully, I mean, I'm not saying I don't still feel those emotions, but they don't exist in the space that controls my responses or reactions to the world around me and the people around me.
Right. Wow. So, with all what you just explained, I hear pressure. There was still a lot of pressure there, right?
Mhm.
And as you started to choose your own path, following your own path, what did guilt look like? Because I can hear, when you're disconnected now from everyone and everything around you to find Quincy, there had
Mhm.
to be a level of guilt.
Yeah, I think that when you're going against the status quo or the normal,
Mhm.
there is a level of guilt because you feel like you're doing something wrong because not
Yeah.
many people that you often encounter are on that same path, that same journey. So in a way you feel isolated and you feel like no one gets me, no one understands me. But at the same time, there's those feelings of shame, that guilt, that piece of
Right.
um, you know, no one gets me, but am I doing something wrong? Like, does that mean I'm doing something wrong because I feel like I'm not connected with anything or anyone
Mhm.
that I had a very deep emotional bond to, that came with sacrificing for a time some relationships that I had to. And I think what hurt the most during that process was having to step away from everyone and everything that I really loved deeply to figure out who I was, to find my inner voice. The guilt of not having my family present through that process, it took a lot out of me. On top of the healing that I had to do, and on top of the self-discovery that I had to do, it really hurt because I didn't get to witness some of my siblings growing. I didn't get to witness some of my family, some big moments in my family's lives. I was talking with them on the phone, but I wasn't there for it. But I knew that I couldn't be there for those moments, those big, beautiful moments, because had I stepped back into those environments, I would have very well lost who I was becoming before I even had a chance to become that person. And I think that's the big part of the scariest part of healing is that that guilt feels very heavy in the moment because it feels like, oh my goodness, I'm betraying relationships, I'm betraying family dynamics, I'm betraying so many things that I thought were normal to, selfishly, which in that sense, healing is selfish. You have to sacrifice those things.
Right,
You have to go through those emotions. And that's okay because we use selfish so often as a negative word. But
right.
sometimes selfish, I would say it's in a way healing and being selfish in that moment is in itself selflessness. Because not only are you healing for yourself, but you're healing for the future of who will be in your life. I think the main thing that really, like I said, the biggest thing that hurt the most that I felt guilty about was my inability to be present in the important moments and in things that were places and people and things that I wanted to be involved with. I couldn't because the external validation that I was seeking before came from a lot of those people, places, and things. And I had to say, okay, well, those people, places, and things can still exist later, but at this time, I need to take a step away.
Yes, before the interruption, you were explaining about the your healing journey is required both physical and emotional separation from your past or from the familiar
Yep.
places.
hmm Yeah, that's the thing that often I hear so much in the healing profession is you're going to have to sacrifice some things
Right.
that really don't feel right and don't feel good. And in the moment, had I just said, okay, well, this doesn't feel great,
Mhm.
and I, regressed or stopped my progress, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation. Because what it came down to was I sat and I thought to myself, what if I just did, what if I just, that was so many of the questions that came
Yeah.
up so often. And then, it's like this internal voice, call it intuition
Yeah.
or God or whomever was there was saying, no, we're not gonna do that. What we're gonna do is we're gonna lay here today
Mhm.
on the couch and we're not gonna do anything. We're going to turn everything off because there were times where I just sat in complete silence. I would turn on you could see the flashing lights behind me. I would turn on those sensory lights and just drift off into thought and think about some things that really hurt in that moment. But then really feeling that hurt, but then recognizing where it started. Where did it come from? How did I get here? How do I put myself in a place, in a position where I don't necessarily have to continue this same cycle? So yeah, I mean, it felt heavy. It did. The guilt felt heavier than I think the guilt and shame was just as equally as intense and
Yeah.
heavy as the actual um going into that dark space to rescue my inner child, truthfully.
In
They
another
were equally difficult.
in another capacity or in another, yeah, I would ask you, but I'm not going to ask, but I would have asked, what was the guilt shame? What was the shame saying? But you don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Well, no, I think it's worth answering.
Okay.
I think a lot of the lies that
Hmm.
guilt and shame were telling me is
Hmm.
that if I sacrifice now, then these people will never be a part of my life again.
Mm.
These people will walk away because they require my constant presence. And I remember coming across something. I don't remember if it was a conversation or something happened.
Hmm.
And someone said to me, or whatever it was, simply said, if people walk out of your life for choosing yourself, they were never meant to stay in the first place.
Right.
Because if they couldn't respect and honor the boundaries that you created, that means they benefited from you not having any in the first place. And that really shifted my perspective to think, okay, wait a minute, take a step back here. I can actually choose myself. Wait. is that a real thing? So I did. I started to test the theory. And then, people would come back and with the same behaviors that they were already engaging with me in, and I would kind of shut it down immediately. And of course, it created distance at that time. But then later on, which I could have never anticipated when I started this healing journey, later on, they came back and they were very much understanding. After having, heart to hearts with them and explaining that none of what I had to do was personal for them. It wasn't personally regarding them. It was all
Mm-hmm.
about me, and that was where even then I recognized who was not meant to stay and who was meant to stay. And those people kind of either naturally fell off, they did something to basically warrant me saying we can no longer have any communication, or they are still here and the capacity in which they exist is not the same. And honestly, I'm okay with that because more often than not, I find more peace in having a smaller circle of people who matter.
Right.
Because then those people don't become a part of the loop that I had already existed in. They become a part of that support system, that support network that's always been needed. So they remain, but they remain in whatever capacity is beneficial, mutually beneficial. Just always maintaining the boundary, right? If I say no, no means no now.
Yeah.
If I say I'm tired, that means I'm tired and I'm not coming.
Right.
And they understand that fully.
Right. Great. What part of your identity had to heal, though? Not just your stress levels or emotion.
I would say my inner child. My inner child was harboring and holding on to a lot of pain
Mm-hmm.
from childhood wounds that I, as an adult, wasn't necessarily encountering or facing. And I had recognized how much self-sabotage had occurred because my inner child was struggling to understand that not everybody who is trying to be a part of your life is trying to hurt you at the same time. Because when your inner child learns to basically affirm the belief that everybody who is important at some point leaves, then you automatically, as an adult, start pushing people away, or you don't even really give them a full opportunity to exist in your life. And exist as they should, not exist in who you want them to be or who you think they are before giving them that opportunity. And I would say that was the biggest struggle is learning how to respond and react to people or lack thereof, because that was my inner child always taking over. When we felt that danger,
Mhm.
even though it wasn't present, we would
Right.
immediately lash out or push someone away through our behavior or get weird in our behavior. Not only did that create situations of, rifts between relationships I had, it also created situations in the work that I did because at some point when criticism or something that felt familiar stepped in, I would then shut down and then my
Trigger.
behavior would be completely different.
Right.
So, the inner child had so much free reign at some point to
Mhm.
just exist fully and take control of everything. And it was reaction after reaction. It wasn't good reaction. It was constant negative reactions, constant lashing out, constant self-sabotage for things that didn't need to be to exist in that space. And I was like, okay, well, wait a minute, time out. Because I remember giving my own self a very stern talking to, a strict tongue lashing, because I'm like, that person didn't do anything to us. Why are you taking out your frustration on them? Take a minute, take a deep breath, bring it back some.
Yeah.
And I did. And that's really where we talked in the last video, where I had to have a lot of that self-conversation,
Mhm.
a lot of, hey, before we lash out, I feel you getting angry.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath, go to the bathroom, splash some water on your face, go outside, get some fresh air, figure something out before you
Mhm.
lash out on this person when they didn't do anything to hurt you. You're allowing a trigger from the past where somebody said exactly what they said or did something similar to what they did to now control how you're about to respond to this situation. Before you do that, take a breath, walk away, come back when you're composed. And that's what I had to do. A lot of the healing was that child.
And the trauma responses, right? trauma responses has no boundaries.
No, it does not.
They totally have no boundaries.
It it will literally have someone in jail. That
And triggers don't ask, when should I
no,
show up?
they don't ask permission at all.
No, they don't. They show up, and it's totally up to us now how we respond. And sometimes, self-compassion, right?
hmm
We do
hmm
have to apply self-compassion, because at the time when we didn't know how to control, right? Or how to
hmm
respond to our trauma responses. Then of course now we have to give ourselves some compassion, self-compassion.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Grace. Grace is the big word that I've had to use a lot.
Yeah.
You give so much grace to everyone else and extend so
Hmm.
much grace to everyone else. Do that to yourself too.
Do that
Give
to
yourself some
yourself.
grace.
And I wanted to go back to the previous question when you explained about the physical and emotional separation, right?
hmm Yeah.
What would you say to someone who is trying to find their own identity, whatever identity means to them? Because identity means different things to different people, right?
hmm
However, what would you say to someone who does not have the capability to remove themselves physically?
Learn to take small moments in time
Mhm.
for yourself. Because speaking from my perspective, I don't
Mhm.
have any children. I'm not married. It's
Right.
just me who has been on this healing journey by myself.
Mhm.
While I do have family and close friends, they didn't live in the same home while I was going through this journey.
Mhm.
It was me alone a lot. So my perspective and perception of healing came from the ability to step away from
Right.
everything and everyone. Now, I would say for someone who has all these connections and these attachments, it's learning to take each moment that you get alone
Mhm.
and take advantage of it to really sit with yourself. Oftentimes, I will tell people if you're in the car driving home, if your commute's longer than 15 minutes or so,
Mhm.
that's a perfect time to spend
Right.
some time thinking. Not all the time do we have to fill up our head with music. Not all the time do we have to fill up our head with podcasts or something that distracts us. We have so much distractions in our current world that in the downtime that we do get, we want relief, right? But what I had found in that aspect was the relief didn't come from the distractions. The relief came from being able to sit with myself for brief moments in time. That's where the relief came because when I sat with myself in those brief moments, it felt that I could really step out of that moment in time with myself and conquer the world, truthfully, because I had figured out in that 15 to 20 minutes of that commute basically what was going on with me in that moment. Say if I
Mhm.
had a stressful day at work and why it was so stressful. Was it something that someone said that triggered something in me? Was it something that I did that I thought I shouldn't have done? Getting that time to spend with myself
Mhm.
was beneficial. And at some point too during that healing journey, I did have roommates. So it
Mhm.
wasn't like I could just physically,
Yeah.
get away from complete and have complete utter silence. I could go in the room and close my door.
Yeah.
That was about as close as it got. I could go for a walk or something, but at the same time, I recognize that in that moment, I didn't have necessarily the environment to do the healing by myself,
Right.
just complete in isolation.
Mhm.
I would say even take shower time was the perfect opportunity. I mean, for years, that was my solitude. Close the door,
Mhm.
just sit in the shower, sometimes in darkness, or sit in the shower I had special lights, sensory lights, and I would just sit there for like an hour in the shower and just feel everything,
Mhm.
let the water wash everything away. And that's where I had those moments, because shower time is really private. If I don't know situation circumstance, but that's a
Mhm.
really private moment. And that's the perfect time to use that time for healing
Yeah,
because water in itself is healing. Naturally speak, like physically speaking, water is so healing. We're
yeah,
70 something percent water.
yeah.
That means use water to heal the body, the mind, and the soul.
I'm laughing, and I'm gonna say why I'm laughing when you talk about the water washing away, right? One of my best coping skill of grounding is just being in the rain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just being in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I told my sister, a couple months ago, I don't want to say I was overwhelmed, but I was getting to that point where, okay, so I know I need to release some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, I cannot wait to get to Jamaica. And I hope when I get there, it's raining because I'm going to go up and down the street
Mm-hmm.
and just let the rain just. And my sister was like, are you going crazy, ma'am? I said, no, but both of us could use that, right?
Yeah.
And I said it lightly and I was laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's true.
Yeah.
One of my best grounding techniques is just getting wet in the rain. I don't like the shower wet
Mm-hmm.
because I don't, for me, I'm not doing enough. I want that rain coming down that hasn't touched anything yet, just me.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Oh yeah, I definitely showers,
yeah,
rain. I
hmm
sit by the river often. Sometimes I'll sit by the river and put my feet in. I
yeah,
mean, water is so healing. And
it
I
is.
think that that is one of the things that helped me along that healing journey was spending a lot of time in water, around water, drinking water.
Yes.
Just a lot of that was truthfully healing. Because I mean, truthfully, there are days where I've gotten so overwhelmed and I just drink a half a gallon of water and I'm feeling, oh, all I needed was some water, really?
Water do
So,
it. Yeah, it
oh
does it
yeah.
all the time.
Oh yeah.
In your profession, and you touched on that a little bit. How difficult was it to care for others while recognizing your own need for healing?
So I'll separate that in two
Right.
because caring for others and my own needs, I know now that they're one and the same, but at the time they felt very separate. That disjointedness created compartmentalization.
Mhm.
So my own needs was kind of compartmentalized when I was taking care of others
Right,
because I was able to say, I'm focused on this person. If I'm taking care of them, then I feel good because I'm making sure someone else is okay.
right.
And it wasn't until some of the negative behavior started popping up when I would get critiques or criticism from bosses or things like that, is when then I would start to spiral and start to feel like, oh goodness, well, something's off here. I'm not doing as well as I thought I was. And I think that's where compassion fatigue comes from, is because you keep putting yourself on the back burner. And in the moment, it was fine. I was able to do just fine taking care of others until I had to face myself again.
Right.
And then things started to spiral. First, it was performance on the job. Then it was, not sleeping. Then it just spiraled into so many different things. And that's where I had started to recognize where the loop was. I had changed so many jobs because I thought it was the job. Let's be clear about that. Some of those jobs were very heavy and not a healthy environment.
Right.
But I would say a percentage of it was also me not being able to navigate
Mhm.
that environment anymore because in a way that guilt and shame popped up again, where now I felt like, oh no, I've put on this facade to trying to make it through every day, and now they see me for who I am, so now I gotta run away.
Yeah.
That was that inner child thinking, oh no, danger, run, and so that was where in my career, until someone saw my heart and actually was able to try to like sit with that, I was fine. But when they started digging deeper than that piece of work and that different things where coworkers, supervisors wanted to know a little bit more personal things,
Mhm.
that's when I started to spiral because I'm like, I don't even think I know who I am. And you're asking me questions that I can't answer. And I like to be so composed and professional presenting at work and put
Mhm.
together that now I feel like I'm not put together anymore. And now I feel like, oh no, everything's falling apart.
Yeah.
So the caring for others was always easy. It wasn't until I had to face myself where it became difficult.
Mhm.
And then that's where I had to recognize, okay, well, how long are you going to run away? How much more running are you going to do before you sit still? Sit still.
Just
And
still,
I'm like, how can I when I don't know any better?
yeah.
All I know is run. When it hurts too much,
Just
run
run.
away.
And we can't
And
run
that
from
was
ourselves.
you can't exactly. Exactly.
You
That's why
know,
one of my favorite songs during my healing was Running Away by Bob Marley. And
yeah,
he says, you're running and you're running and you're running away, but you can't run away from yourself.
yeah.
And that, and the phrase that got me really through that phase, the
Huh?
healing phase, was, you must have done something wrong that you don't want nobody to know about. And I had to
Mhm.
sit with that and think, wait, I didn't do anything wrong.
Mhm.
I couldn't control that I was going through all the traumatic events as a child. I was a child. I didn't do anything wrong. But that guilt and shame makes you feel like you have always done something wrong, even when it's not about you.
When it's not about you. And so you said it just right. Even when that guilt and shame is not about us, we are carrying things that really doesn't belong to us. We're carrying emotional burden
Yep.
that is not ours to carry anyways.
Yep. True statement.
It's not ours.
Yep. That was one of my prayers
Yeah.
towards the middle of my healing.
Mhm.
God, please take away feelings, thoughts, and actions that are not mine to keep
Mhm.
or that are mine to hold. And that was a
That's-
mantra for a while,
yeah.
every morning.
Mhm. Oh yeah. How
Hmm.
difficult was it to separate who you are as a person, right? From who or from what you do? And it's kind of the same question for others.
That was probably one of the toughest challenges, honestly,
Mhm.
because, in our culture, very much. You go to school to be a doctor, a lawyer, something big. That's something that's going to make money and something that has prestige.
Yeah.
That's very much what was drilled into my head as a child.
Mhm.
And so most of my professional career, I've been blessed and fortunate enough to not have the same path as people my age.
Mhm.
Of the last 8 or 9 years that I've been working, or I've been working for 10, 11 years, but in my profession,
Yeah.
since 2019, in that up until 2025, I had been in management roles, supervising roles. I mean, my first big boy job, as I called it,
Mhm.
I was 22 on the verge of 23, and I got this job to manage a $500,000 project.
Mhm.
And at that time, my young ego was, man, I'm a hot shot. I got my first supervising job.
Yeah.
I'm doing big things. And the next 5 years I spent doing supervisory things, working in
Mhm.
a supervisory role. And so like for those time, I'm thinking, oh man, like this is just perfect. But burnout set in.
Mhm.
And I realized that I was carrying way too much to be that young, to have all types of emotional disturbance things coming on, not sleeping, stress to the point of feeling heart palpitation, all the things that came with that. And I'm like, I'm too young to be going through this.
Yeah.
And I really had to sit myself down and talk with myself. It helped that I had a support system
Mhm.
that was also, very wise, where they said just because you're not working in the field that you want to be, or if you're not doing the management or the leadership thing, that doesn't make you less than. That actually gives you room to breathe because my closest family here in North Dakota just said to me, all we see you do is stress. We don't see you much anymore. Every time
Mhm.
we see you, you seem that you're on the edge. There's just so much going on with you, and we don't enjoy seeing you like this.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, it woke me up to say, okay, wait a minute. I need to take a step back from the career aspect of things
Mhm.
because yes, I'm making decent money yes, I'm building a wonderful resume that supersedes my years, my
Mhm.
age. I'm building all these things, but why is it so worth it if I can't even enjoy the
Yeah.
accolades that I'm enjoying and the things like that? I can't give me a sorry. But yeah, if I'm gaining all these things, the scripture, right? Gaining all these things to lose my soul, what's the point? What's the use? Because now here I am, a mess, and can't even function outside of work because that became my identity. Work became my identity. So when things weren't working out at work, I felt like I was a failure. And then that
Mhm.
translated into my personal life, where when things in my life hadn't worked out in the past, I attribute that to I'm not good enough, that I'm not doing enough, that,
Mhm.
I chose the wrong path, I chose the wrong things. And that wasn't accurate. It was
Yeah.
just, lack of healing.
When work become our identity, right? And that's one of the reasons why I've always encouraged others, and I've always told myself when someone asks, "Who are you?" I never, I don't want to use my career as who I am. That was in
Hmm.
the past. But the
Hmm.
more the more I learn, right, the more I've come to understand our careers are not who we are. It's just what we do. And
A
that's
part of
why I think a lot of people struggle with knowing who they are outside of what they do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's where I also struggled too in my
Mhm.
journey, is that I had to realize how many people in the career that I was working in, my bosses, my
Mhm.
supervisors, the people who were running these companies, I had recognized that they hadn't spent a lot of time healing.
Mhm.
And everything that they were was work. And that's where we call the hustle culture,
Mhm. Yeah.
everything is about hustle, 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 work, 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 work. And I think that's a societal issue. That's not a personal issue. That's just kind of the society that we live in, that we are very much in American culture, you're very much work, work, work to achieve more and more and more or get more and more and more. So it's what they say, the rat race. So you're constantly going to get these things and not really spending enough time to get to know you.
And especially when because there are two alternatives of working to get things, right? One is by inspiration and one is definitely out of desperation. And it seemed like a good 80% of us is over here on the desperation side,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether we know it or not. And that is
Yeah.
why we can't slow down because we just want everything to work out now, quick, fast, and in a hurry until we
Oh yeah.
forget ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I encourage when healing is take time.
Mhm.
Take time with yourself. Every time that I got overwhelmed,
Mhm.
from a very young age, my grandpa drilled something very much into my head. If I don't remember anything my grandpa told me, it was to take your time. Do not rush through life. Take your time
Yeah.
and do it right the first time so you do not have to repeat it again.
Right.
And I translated that into every aspect of my life. When I
Mhm.
started to take my time with myself, oh man, it just felt like today, I'll even speak about today. I was rushing and getting things done because, I have other things to do.
Yeah.
And in the moment, I just got overwhelmed and I just sat and I said, okay, I know I still have things to get done, but let me sit down for 5 minutes,
Mhm.
do some breathing, wrap myself up in a comfortable blanket, take some time for me, because right now I'm a little bit overwhelmed. And I did, and I came out of that just feeling fine, getting ready to go do what I have to do and keep going. So I think that's one of the things that really, I said this to my grandmother recently. It's not that people don't want to heal, it's that they don't make the time to heal. And it's not that they don't have the time, it's
They
that
don't
they
make
don't
it.
make the time. Because when you're at the bar after work or
Yeah.
you're at, a game, that, sporting events. I'm not saying you should not go and enjoy your life, but sometimes a lot of times, healing requires sacrifice. I'm gonna miss this, this game this time around so that I can go for a walk with myself and really clear my head. I'm gonna miss the bar tonight, guys.
Mhm.
Let me catch up with you later.
Yeah.
Those types of things. We don't have to always be doing something to be productive. And I think that's what a lot of people need to hear.
We
You
don't
don't have to be busy to be productive.
know, because you know what? Being productive, the best part of being productive is sitting with yourself.
Yes.
It's not being lazy, as
Mhm.
we think is lazy, it's boring. No, we're sitting, becoming one with ourselves. That's
Absolutely.
productivity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is
I agree.
productivity. You know,
I agree.
talking about slowing down, I was in Africa last month and I was just rushing. This is our culture, we rush, right? I was getting on their train and I had a bag and a suitcase and I'm just trying to get out the way. And another person said to me, oops, slow down. In Kenya, there's no rush.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really, he said that, and I literally stood there and took a deep breath
Mm-hmm.
because in my mind, I just had to rush to get to my seat so others could get on the train. And he was, take your time. In Africa, there's no rush. And
Absolutely.
he just really probably would not understand that he spoke into me then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just stood there. I'm like, really? He said, yes. And I stood there and took a few deep breaths before sitting down.
Yeah. The little
Yeah,
moments. The
the little
moments that we make
moments,
time for.
the little moments we make time for.
Yeah.
And going back to a lot of people, we don't take time for healing because we think we don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm led to believe because we don't want to face ourselves.
Yeah.
Because
That's
once,
accurate.
yeah, because once we get on the healing journey, I believe, because what we're looking at and what we think we need to be healed, that's the surface. But once
Yeah.
you start doing the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like going to the beach and put one toe in and just the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But until you get into the water, right? Get into the deep,
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel that water.
Nope.
No.
Yep. I uh I can speak to that for sure. As I said earlier, there was times where I wanted to give up. I wanted to regress. I said, this is too much. This can't be normal. I can't do this. A lot of self-defeating language. And I shift my perspective and said, well, if I don't do it, who will?
Yeah.
Who's gonna do it for me? The one thing that has always played in my head, especially healing my inner child, was you're an adult now. No one's coming to save you. Either you're gonna save yourself or you're gonna continue living a life that you don't enjoy.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, true enough.
Mhm.
And I didn't take that serious. And then when I finally started taking that serious and I actually started seeing no one's coming to save me, is when I started to truthfully save myself and
Right.
figure out ways to do so.
Yeah.
And since then, I mean, it's been easier to sit with some of the things that I never was able to.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it all goes away. You always are going to remember that's the human
Yeah.
mind, but it becomes easier.
It
It
becomes
truthfully
easier.
becomes easier to exist in your skin without
Yeah.
feeling like you need to crawl out of it every minute.
Yeah. The thoughts of that will surface. What we do with
Oh,
that thoughts is
absolutely.
what we do with that thought is what matters,
What manifests,
right? But when we have those thoughts and not allowing those thoughts to hurt us anymore,
hmm
that's healing.
Exactly. And it's
It's
okay to have those negative
yeah.
thoughts.
Mhm.
Just don't act on them.
That's right. No.
And if you act on them, try to do something positive
Yeah.
rather than something negative. And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of people judge themselves for having thoughts, negative thoughts, and that's not fair. Because, you know, recently in a therapy session, my therapist said, if you were sitting next to you when you were having those negative thoughts and you were talking to that person, would you want them to beat up on themselves? How would you respond to that? What would you say to them? And I paused and I said, this is what I would say. And he said, exactly. So when you're having those negative thoughts, maybe turn that back on yourself and think, you deserve the same kind of grace, that word came up again,
Yeah,
that you extend to others. And while I'm aware of that, sometimes it's harder to give ourselves grace than it is
it's,
to do for others.
it is
And if we
harder.
could flip that, give ourselves more grace, then naturally we still give others the same amount of grace with discernment,
With
knowing what's
discernment.
right from wrong.
That is awful. And that is a powerful statement to end with.
Hmm.
But before we end, tell us about your newfound adventure, your
Aurelia,
business. Yes.
Astrus. Oh yeah. So in a chaotic world in which we have witnessed, I wanted to create something beautiful for individuals,
Yeah.
something custom, something that brings people back to themselves. A moment in time, as we've been talking about, where that self can be honored. And so with Aurelia, what came about from that is I've spent many, many years researching and developing um like skin care products for myself because I have very sensitive skin, and
Mhm,
as a child and a teenager I had a lot of difficulty finding something that worked for my skin.
mhm,
A few years ago, pretty much I had found the perfect formula for myself, but it was also an extensive amount of research that I developed this skincare routine for myself where it was non-pore clogging. It was things oils and herbs meant for sensitive skin and all those types of things. And I was just laying in bed one day and this voice said to me, "This is your business. Do this as the business." And that's what brought Aurelia about. But the intention behind every creation, whether that's the soap bars that I make or the body oils that I make, the shower or bath products,
mhm,
what that is for each individual who purchased that product to have something that feels like them and something that can bring them back to their body. In our profession, we often use sensory work to help with decompression or help with when someone's overwhelmed. Even in excuse me, what's the word I'm looking for? Regardless,
mhm.
it's something that I created to also give a piece of my heart to the world because I've always held on to the cultural aspect of, Jamaican culture where leave a legacy.
Good.
Leave a
Yeah.
legacy for those who come after you. And I feel that this is a huge part of my legacy, but my legacy is rooted in love and healing. I've always known since I was a child that I have this innate ability to heal people and things, animals and things like that around me. And so I just thought, okay, through this business, how could I leave my legacy? Now, I'm not saying that any product is healing or anything like that, because the intention behind it is how you use it. That's with anything. But it's customized to the person. I have a questionnaire on the website that basically helps me customize every creation to the person to
Mhm,
ensure that the intention behind this is exactly what you're looking for, but to also ensure that it's safe for you to receive. Meaning, I look for allergies, I look for things that you don't like. So, say like certain smells trigger certain people's responses to certain things. I have that question on there that basically says, is there a smell that triggers some
yeah.
people I know? Vanilla is one of those things that triggers headaches for some people.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't use that in the creation,
Mhm,
but it's just to be very thorough to ensure that this feels like wholeness in the body or it feels what it's intended to feel like. So yeah, Aurelia, it launched at the beginning of this month. And I am excited to see where it goes.
mhm.
But at the same time, it's one of those businesses that I feel if you find it,
Yeah.
it was meant for you. It's not something it's not created in, it's not a huge production business. It's literally order and then I
Mhm.
create based on that questionnaire and the order. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Check it
really in
out,
a
guys,
nutshell.
and make sure you do support his business. And this conversation, of course, we talked about healing, slowing down. And so many people are functioning while emotionally exhausted, disconnected, and caring more than others realize. But slowing down is not weakness. Rest is not failure. And healing deserves time, honesty, and grace. Thank you for watching. And as always, keep moving forward. Quincy, it was good to have you.
Pleasure.